When young people don't feel safe, it's harder to concentrate at school. It's harder to build confidence. It's harder to dream about the future when you can barely understand the times of current. Fear limits growth. Stability expands it. My life could have been shaped by instability. Instead, it was shaped by resilience, love and support.
In Queensland, if you are homeless, under the age of 16 and not under the protection of child safety, you cannot get a safe place to stay and almost have no access to financial supports.
Society as a whole, we would prefer to wait until it's actually a problem and a crisis rather than fixing it from the root.
Young people are not defined by the worst things they have experienced. They're not defined by their parents' mistakes. They are shaped by the environment that engulfs them, by whether they feel valued, loved, and safe.
So many of the speakers today, at their heart of the theme was that what changed their life was someone who was willing to show up for them, rain, hail or shine, again and again, and be that stable base in their life. And I think that's something, as people who work in policy, we need to think about how we can make that happen for every young person.
But what if this wasn't the journey I had to take? What if, instead of survival, there was support?
The standard we walk past is the standard we accept. And for too long, the standard we accepted for kids like me has not been good enough. The next kid on your caseload is not a number and does not deserve to be treated like one. I know because I was that kid. My name isn't a number, it's Alex.